we've had such poor outcomes with cancer. The American Cancer Society about 5 years ago had to move the goalposts just to save face. So now, if you're a cancer victim and you survive for 5 years past the date of initial diagnosis, if you die on day 1 plus 5 years, that therapy that you were given for cancer is considered successful.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and what's even more unbelievable is selenium, for instance. Selenium, which is a mineral supplement, like calcium and magnesium, cheaper than dirt because it's made from dirt, for goodness sake. That's where it comes from. 200 micrograms of selenium supplementation reduced the occurrence of breast cancer
by 82%, right?
By 82%, yeah. And my colleague, Dr. Wallach, had to sue the FDA in order to be able to say that legally without being thrown in jail. And I want you to ask yourself a question, right? And all of this is based on, research, published research. How many women who were listening to this broadcast got a phone call from your doctor, said, Mary, you're not going to believe it. I just read in the Journal of the American Medical Association that selenium has remarkable anti-cancer effects. I know there's a history of breast cancer in your family. I want you to go to the health food store tonight. If they're not open, I want you to throw a brick through the window. I want you to go inside and get some selenium and start taking it. Because if you do, it pretty much looks like you're going to reduce your chances of getting breast cancer by 82%. Now, how many women got that phone call? 0. Why did we have to sue the FDA in order to be able to say this publicly without fear of being thrown in jail? Because medicine is a monopoly in the United States, and it's all pharmacy all the time, all surgery all the time. We have lost the war on cancer, but nobody is saying this. The only people that are saying this, Suzanne Summers, get vilified in the popular press. And, we are upside down, inside out, and completely backwards here when it comes to medicine. And cancer is a perfect example.
It's interesting. You also said that selenium also can reduce prostate cancer by 69%, colorectal cancer by 64%, and lung cancer, even for smokers, by 39%. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and that's just one.
Right, that's just one mineral, right?
Yeah, there's 60 essential minerals. Selenium is just one of them. The bigger question is, why aren't we putting cancer research into vitamins and minerals? Because you cannot patent a vitamin and mineral because they're naturally occurring substances. You can't go to Washington, D.C. and patent orange juice or oxygen or calcium.
Leave it to Monsanto. They're patenting pigs. They're patenting the molecular structure of seeds. They're trying to patent all animals.
Well, they're doing it by genetically modifying them.
Yeah.
Right? And
yeah.
So, I suppose probably you could say that there's a workaround for it. I found a reference for the chemotherapy. It's the Journal of Clinical Oncology, Volume 16, Issue 8, December 2004. That's the Journal of Clinical Oncology, Volume 16, Issue 8, December 2004, folks. That's 7 years ago. And, from that day to today, more chemotherapy has been prescribed than ever, even though it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. In my book, by the way, I have 9 or 10 maybe questions that every cancer patient should ask their oncologist. Every cancer patient should ask your oncologist these 10 questions. And I have had a handful of patients do that, and they've been kicked out of their oncologist's office. The oncologist got up and stormed away and refused to talk to them because these questions cut to the bone. Doctor, how much will you profit from this therapy? Doctor, what percentage of patients that have this type of cancer at my age have actually been cured from it? Doctor, what specific side effects can I expect from this treatment? Doctor, what are my chances of a cure from this type of cancer with your therapy? Doctor, I understand that your hospital is a for-profit industry. How much will this hospital profit from my cancer treatment?
I've actually heard that hospitals make hundreds and thousands of dollars from cancer treatments.
They do. That's why they exist. And Cancer Treatment Centers of America, in my opinion, is the worst offender. The worst offender. Because they pitch themselves as being holistic and using naturopathic physicians. And, they do. They're the only cancer treatment centers in the world that employ naturopathic physicians, but they don't use holistic therapy to treat cancer. They use holistic therapeutics to clean up the mess that the chemo and the radiation and the surgery created so that the patient can get a couple of more rounds of chemo, radiation, and surgery so the hospital can make more money. They don't have outcomes. Nobody has outcomes. We've lost the war on cancer. We need to snap out of it and collectively all wake up. And it's extremely frustrating, and it all goes back to one reason. Medical doctors have drunk their own Kool-Aid. They actually, the education of a medical doctor, an M.D., an allopathic M.D., is such a meat grinder in this country that medical doctors come out of their education actually believing that if they weren't taught it in medical school, it's just not valid. So since they don't know how to cure cancer, nobody can. So therefore, their point of view when they're talking to a cancer patient is, look,
this is all we got.
This is all we got. You have like a 2% chance of pulling through this or adding another 5 years to your life, so you might as well just shut up and do it, because you're not going to go to those back-of-the-bus naturopathic, homeopathic, chiropractic quacks, because they're just going to kill you. And even though exactly the opposite is true. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, the third leading cause of death in the United States is your M.D. The third leading cause of death. And yet we line up for their treatment. We can't wait for their treatment. And every time the government makes noise about messing with your health care, everybody gets into a dither. And I want you to think about this. When you buy insurance, what are you doing? You are betting that you're going to get so sick you won't be able to afford it. That's what health insurance is.
That is what it is.
That is what it is. And you're buying access to a system of medicine that's the third leading cause of death in the United States.
What do you think about the fact that we are potentially about to be forced to pay for pharmaceutical grade medical insurance vis-a-vis the government?
I think it's ridiculous. And, I don't think it'll fly. I don't think, and if it does, talk about a monopoly, right? I mean, this is how much of the Kool-Aid these people have drunken. They actually believe that they are the gods of medicine and that they know everything there is to know about medicine. And everybody has to just shut up and do what they say to do, even though doing what they say to do kills you and doesn't work. Look, we talked about cancer, but let's talk about heart disease. 100 years ago, heart disease was the number one killer. 50 years ago, it was the number one killer. Now, after 45 years of statin drugs, cholesterol-lowering drugs, fat-free diets, and exercise, heart disease is still the number one killer. Obesity is on the rise. High blood pressure is on the rise. Life expectancy is falling, plummeting. Autism is on the rise. Fibromyalgia is on the rise. Chronic illness is on the rise while we have let the M.D.s drive the bus of medicine. They have driven it over the cliff, into a ditch, at the bottom of a swamp, and we don't know any better because we have suffered from 100 years of public relations nonsense telling us that, the M.D., Marcus Welby, and the guy from MASH, and the guys from Grey's Anatomy, and George Clooney, isn't he so good looking, and all of this nonsense. We actually believe that the M.D. is the undisputed king of medicine, and that false notion is killing us.
I have to share something with you. Last month, I interviewed Dr. Nick Gonzalez out of New York for the second time about the death of Steve Jobs. And one of the things that he shared that didn't get to the public is that Steve Jobs had two critical medical procedures that are really responsible for his early death. One, he had a liver transplant he didn't need. And two, they gave him a certain type of drug. Once you have a transplant, you have to take these drugs because your body doesn't accept the new organ. Right. So what happens is what they gave him as a drug is a cancer-causing drug. He also had a WIPA procedure, which practically kills most of the people they do it with.
Right.
So a lot of this never got to the public.